Hello, I'm Hadley Marchek from the American Chemical Society. Welcome to this media briefing for ACS Fall 2022. Large pieces of plastic can break down into tiny particles. These are known as nanoplastics, and these tiny particles can find their way into the soil, water, and because they're so light, they can also float in the air. It's unclear exactly how nanoplastics in the air may impact our health, but animal studies do show that they could potentially be harmful. So today, researchers are presenting a new sensor that they've developed to measure the amounts of nanoplastics in the air. They do this using colorful carbon dot films. We're joined today by Dr. Raz Yelnek from Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Israel. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Raz, how did you get the idea for your team's project?
Well, actually, it started when we developed a nose, an electrical nose for gas molecules. It was a recent invention, very simple. And what it did, it allowed us to detect very easily and very quickly vapor molecules, different vapor molecules in air. Then we came across these papers, both in scientific literature and also in the popular literature, about nanoplastics, the nanoplastics in air. And we thought maybe we can apply our electronic nose for detecting these tiny nanoplastics that float around in air quickly and simply, inexpensively.
And so why is detecting nanoplastics so important?
The reason is that they can penetrate, because they're very small, they can penetrate through our protective layers in the body, like specifically the blood-brain barrier that protects our brain. And if these nanoplastics can go anywhere in our body, even into our cells probably, then it can do harm because it's a foreign object. You don't know how it's going to interfere with processes in your body, in your cells, in your brain. It's very important to know whether it's there in the air in order to protect yourself.
And so, as you said previously, your team developed this electronic nose or e-nose to detect vapors that are released by bacteria. So how were you able to modify or change what you had done for that sensor to detect nanoplastics?
Actually, we did not do anything. We just took the same sensor, which can capture molecules from the air, and we tested it for nanoplastics. The nice thing was that nanoplastics, because these are such small, tiny particles, they attached quite easily to our sensor and generated signals. That was the breakthrough. So we took our sensor and we simply saw that it responds, it gives signal to nanoplastics.
And your sensor is made using these colorful carbon dot films. Do you mind explaining briefly what carbon dots are?
Sure. Carbon dots are extremely simple to make. The truth of the matter is that when you make popcorn or when you drink beer, actually, there are inside carbon dots. This is something we just found out in the last 10 or 20 years. Specifically, carbon dots are small nanoparticles made of carbon. So essentially, you can take any carbon that you like. You can take sugar, you can take plastic, you can take clothes. You heat it to a relatively low temperature, and it produces carbon dots. Then we took the carbon dots and we put them on the surface. We created films. The nice thing about carbon dots, the reason we use them in our sensor, is that they capture molecules and other nanoparticles like nanoplastics from the air in a very straightforward and fast manner. And that's what makes them so good as a sensor. Because what you want in a sensor, you want something that will capture your target. In our case, these are the nanoplastics. And you want it to generate a signal. And this is actually where carbon dots help us. The carbon dots do not generate the signal, but they capture the nanoplastics molecules.
And what's the signal?
Basically, the signal from our electronic nose is an electrical signal. It's called capacitance. What the carbon dots do when they capture these nanoplastic particles from the air, they change the electrical capacitance. And this is our signal.
Great. So your nanoplastic sensor is not only able to detect nanoplastics from the air, but it's also able to determine their types and amounts as well as the sizes, correct?
That's correct.
So how is it able to do that?
This is actually the secret of the capacitance, the electrical capacitance. Because what the carbon dots do, they take from the air various substances like nanoplastics. The nice thing is that when you capture a big nanoplastic or a big particle of plastic, it changes the capacitance differently compared to a small plastic nanoparticle. Similarly, when you take from the air plastic from one type of polymer, let's say polypropylene, it generates a capacitance signal which is different than another particle, another plastic, for example, polyethylene or polystyrene. And this is because the capacitance is extremely sensitive to what you have on the film.
And so does your team have any plans for manufacturing or commercializing these types of nanoplastic sensors?
This is actually one dream that we have. So if any of your audience has a spare $1 million, we're here, and definitely we see in this development, in this invention, great potential. And we do want, and we do think actually, that it will be commercialized at the end of the day.
And so then to get to that step, what are some things that you still need to do in your research to be able to do that?
The most important thing is actually to test as many nanoplastics as possible. We have to prove that our sensor can distinguish between a broad range of nanoplastics, both in terms of size, also in terms of concentration, also in terms of composition. Also, we have to make sure that our sensor works in different temperatures, in different humidity conditions, in all these parameters that affect our environment and our air. Once we do that, once we optimize all these conditions, we can start building the algorithms that will take or will test certain nanoplastics in air and can tell you right away, look, you have this nanoplastics in this concentration, be careful.
And so finally, as sort of a wrap up to our discussion, what is something that you want viewers to take away from today?
Well, the most important thing is that science can do magic. And science can help humanity, actually. In our case, we really believe that our nanoplastics eNose can be used as a very useful, very effective monitoring platform for alerting people on the presence of dangerous nanoplastics in air.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing your research with us.
Sure, you're welcome.
Be sure to check out our other media briefings for ACS Fall 2022. which will be posted throughout the meeting at www.acs.org/ACS Fall 2022 briefings.